Living a richer lifestyle has nothing to do with money. And in this episode, my amazing guest shares more about how to take steps forward to create a dream vision for your life and live a richer lifestyle. Hey ladies, it's Amanda. Welcome to the Feel Amazing Naked podcast. This is a show where we dig deep, get honest, and talk about all the unsexy steps it takes to meet your goals. Whether you want to get fit, eat healthier, make more money, start a business, or any other results you desire in your life. Most of all, this podcast is for women who are ready to feel amazing naked on the outside and the inside. So ladies, time to take it off. Hey ladies, does finding an entire 60 minutes in the morning to yourself feel basically impossible? Between late nights, early alarm clocks, maybe your kids waking up, a demanding career, your mind just racing like a ping pong machine, and everything in between, then I have something for you. I've created a morning routine guide, and not one that has you going through all of these steps. I've created a 10-minute morning routine practice that actually works. So you can download it for free at feelamazingnaked.com/morning. And when you grab it, you'll receive a step-by-step morning routine practice, a 2-minute morning visualization that will help you create exactly the day you want, and some daily journaling prompts to help you become aware of your thinking so that you can create more flow, more energy, more ease, and more calm. So again, head on over to feelamazingnaked.com/morning to grab your guide now. All right, ladies, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have today's guest on hand. And if you're a listener, you know that I have really only had a male voice on one time before, and that's been my husband's. And I'm excited to welcome more inspiring men to the show. And today is one of them. It's so great to have Mel Abraham here. So welcome.
Oh my God, Amanda, it's so good to be here and to get a chance to chat.
Yeah. Well, I want to give a little backstory to how we even met. We were invited to attend a mutual colleagues networking event, more or less, Selena Sue. She's the ultimate connector from my experience. And after this really cool event, you kind of just very authentically started sharing some wisdom at the end of the event. And I was just sucked in. Didn't know your name, didn't know who you are, but I was like, this guy's amazing. And you were sharing a little bit about your own personal journey and your learnings over the last couple years, which I know we'll dive into. So I went immediately to the gram and I was like, who's this guy? I want to find out his website. And I was sucked in just from your learnings and just kind of a very authentic way you communicate. So I would love for you to share with the audience what the work in the world is that you do now and kind of where it all originated.
At the risk of turning them all off, I'm a CPA by education. But I actually started an entrepreneurial journey at age 11. I was doing magic shows for kids' birthday parties, getting paid $50 for a half-hour show.
That's so freaking cool. Your cool meter just like elevated.
Well, will it go down if I tell you that I was dressed as a clown when I did it?
Not
did the
at
balloon
all.
Animals and everything.
Not one bit.
Oh my God. But it was the first time I saw that you could make money, do something that you enjoyed, and affect people's lives. That was the bug for me. And so I kind of, even though I went through the accounting route and the CPA, I believe that my calling and this new chapter in my life is really focused on helping people create their dreams. I believe financial independence is a birthright, and we just need to understand how to claim it and to allow people to just live fully into who they were meant to be through entrepreneurship, through business. And so that's kind of how I show up, is really helping those do that and just seeing their dreams come alive.
Crazy that it started up with a magic trick. How did you even get into magic?
Oh, gosh. So I remember I was sitting with my dad. We were watching a movie with Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis about Harry Houdini. And I go, this guy's cool. There's no boxes or chains that are going to hold him. And so I started researching, and I started to get really hooked on this idea of magic. And there happened to be a magic shop across the valley. Now, back then, you wouldn't do this with your kids these days, but at 9 and 10 years old, I was getting on the bus, the RTD, across the valley during the summer months when I wasn't in school. And I would spend days in the magic shop just watching and learning. And some guy comes in and he said, and they're talking, and I hear him say something about, yeah, I had a gig this weekend. And when he leaves, I'd look at the owner and I said, hey, Matt, I go, what's a gig? And he says, oh, yeah, they do shows and they get paid. I said, I can get paid to do magic? And he said, yeah. I said, what do I need to do? And so he told me about it. And so I went back home and I kind of figured out an act. And my mom was the one that actually made the clown outfit, which I still have. I don't fit in it. But she made the clown outfit. I started to put flyers out. I started to do things at parks. And all of a sudden, I'm doing birthday parties for kids doing magic.
Amazing. So then where did it go as an adult? Like, okay, so magic trick leads to the next thing. And obviously you end up in the CPA world. And now you're like way, beyond that. What was the trajectory from there like?
For me, I came away from the magic primarily because I got involved in sports and I went to college and I didn't know what I was going to do in college. I actually went there thinking I was going to be a doctor. And it didn't take me long to go, wait a second. Doctors, blood.
We're kindred souls. I was pre-med too. I was like, oh, really? I did one internship with a family practitioner like my junior year. And I had to, this is a really funny story, but he made me go in and treat like hemorrhoids with him on like an 80-year-old man. And then he came out and he was like, is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? I was like, yeah, I'm going to just revisit it. Let me take a look. So
I just couldn't. The only thing about me that's a doctor is my signature. You can't read it.
Same.
Because I just, the side of blood, I mean, none of that. So someone told me that accounting is a good general business because I always was intrigued by business, but I said, all right, let me go to accounting. I didn't know what it was. But the very first job I passed the CPA exam while I was in college, but I go to one of the big firms in downtown LA. And the first job they put me on is to do inventory of a company by the name of Bandini. For people that don't know it, now this was August in LA. It's 103 degrees. Bandini is a manufacturer of fertilizer. So I am out of school standing in tons and mounds of steaming manure going, this is what I went to school for?
I didn't sign up for this.
But that's when I started to say, all right, the reason I'm here is to develop a skill set. And I felt like there was this yearning inside of me that there had to be something more. There had to be something bigger. And so I was there to sharpen the knives, sharpen the skills, and then go out and serve. So I spent my 5-6 years there. And then I just quit. And I started to look to how do I help people in a big firm? You're doing one little piece of the business. But it was really then, how do I help people with my skill set, allow them to affect their lives, to build something, to live their dreams? And that's where I kind of went from there, really was building that and working with other entrepreneurs and buying and selling businesses. And that led to the speaking, that led to the book, that led to all these other things that most CPAs would never do.
Yeah. You said something in there. Well, two things that have already come up as you've been talking is you said, I felt like that yearning, like that little nudge, which I totally relate with just those words. I think so many women listening to the show do. It's like that inner knowing that there is more. I'm curious, how would you coach someone or what would you offer? Because so many women are stuck in that place. Like, what do you say to somebody that's like, okay, it's there. I feel it. Like, how do I go take action?
I think that you got to move towards the light. I really think that too often, if we bring back our childlike curiosity, our childlike spirit, I mean, when we ask a child what they want to do when they grow up, it's not one thing. It's a list of things. And yet society and academia or whatever it is, train it out of us and say, oh no, this is the one thing. Like we're supposed to know what we're supposed to do for the rest of our lives at a young age and believe that that's the case. So I think that for me, I would sit back and say, all right, so let's figure out if this is truly what you want to do. Let's create a plan. Let's create some sort of plan for you to test the waters, to test the yearning, to see what it is that you're finding. I'm speaking tomorrow and I'm finding purpose. And one of the aspects of it is that I believe one of the mistakes we make is thinking that we have a singular purpose. I mean, we don't. And we have multiple purposes and those things will shift over time. And the purpose is actually not a destination. It's actually the journey that we're on. And that journey is to in my mind, comes down to this idea of being generous. Generous first to ourselves, and that's honoring the yearning, and then generous to others, because when we give to others, when we teach others, we have to find ourselves at a deeper level. And so I think that for me, I would sit back and say, and now the money side of me would say, well, if you have kids and you have obligations, let's put a plan in place and let's do it systematically and responsibly. But nonetheless, we don't push it down, because it's going to ache and it's going to continue to ache the rest of your life. And I think the worst feeling would be in those last years. My dear mother's 87 years old. And to get to that point in life and start to regret that, what would have happened if I just tried it? Even if it came back to it and said, yeah, that was fun, but it didn't give me what I wanted. Now you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the risk of cliche, like feeling amazing naked is feeling a component of that to me is self-trust, right? And just listening to that inner wisdom that exists and giving yourself permission to tap into it, because especially, you know, as mothers, which so many of the ladies are, is we're stuck in like this cookie cutter, go to school, get married, have children, like this very strict and rigid box that can't be, like for me, I was trapped in that for so long. It can't be and also. And I even feel that in business right now as we're having this conversation. It's like, I love this element of, you know, coaching women and more of a life coaching element. And I really love entrepreneurship. So like I can be and also, but I think even in business, it's like niche down, serve one group. I'm like, I don't really want to do that. I like I like both things, right?
Well, and I think you're right on. And I think that there's one other aspect of it that I learned this from my 6-year-old boy, is that this idea of work-life balance. I was a single full-time dad of my son since he was 5.5. Okay. So I played mom and dad while building this, but I think that motherhood is probably the greatest gift, the most challenging job, and the most important job to our future. And we don't give it the value or the credit that it deserves. And at the same time, you know, people will flippantly say, well, get balance in your life. And yet balance insinuates that you have these two counterbalancing weights that are tugging at each other that on average create balance. And I don't think it has to do with balance. I think it has to do with harmony, and really finding a way to say, how do we harmonize the gift of motherhood, the desire and yearning on the internal side, the wanting to serve bigger, the relationship with your husband or your partner, and find that harmony where they can all coexist, because I believe that's the only way to live.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like you're speaking my language. One of the things we talk about is the dials, because I always give this analogy. I don't know what year you were born. We don't have to talk about those things here, but my first car, I saved up all this money to buy one of those radios that you pull out. Do you remember that?
I remember those.
Okay. So I saved up all this money, which was probably like $200 at the time. It felt like an eternity I saved. So I could buy one of those radios that you pull out and then you can carry with you to look real cool. Like you have this radio. But I remember it had like 15 dials on it. And that's how I envisioned my life. And I say rhythm rather than harmony, but I'm constantly tweaking and adjusting the dials. And I've got this motherhood dial, and I've got this spousal dial. I've got this health dial, which is like really turned up for me quite often, which I read about you. You're a health guy too. But I'm constantly playing with the knobs. And when I envision my life like that, it just is a sense of relief. I'm no longer carrying this equal two things, because like who has two things they're balancing? We are all balancing a million things. And so I give myself permission to understand, like, sometimes I do have to turn down the work dial. Sometimes I do turn down the knob with motherhood. And guess what? I have the full potential to turn it back up whenever I need to or want to.
I love that analogy, because when you do that, you're living aware, conscious, and intentional. And that is where we come from, versus so often people will find themselves in a boat on a river in a current with no oars, no direction, and no idea where they're going. And it's just not the way to live life.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so can we talk about money stuff? Because you mentioned something at the beginning. I love money talk. So you said something that you believe financial independence is a birthright. And that like struck me. Can you talk to that? Like, what does that mean to you? What allowed you to create that decision or that belief?
For me, that I've always kind of come from a place of possibility. No matter how hard it was, why not? Why not? Why not me? Why not? That's just the way I approach things. But what really hit me, and so we'll get a little more on the personal side, because I think it really what elevated it was in June of 2019. I got diagnosed with it. They found a 5-centimeter tumor in my bladder. Had no risk factors. I should have never had it. No one in my family ever had it. And as I was going in for surgery, the doctor looked at me and says, look, it's on top of the prostate. We might have to remove the prostate. We might have to put a tube in for the kidney in a bag. And if it's real bad, you're going to lose your bladder. I'm like, what? I mean, my whole life completely got turned upside down in an instant. And so in that process, I started to understand and look at, I got to heal. And so I shut my businesses down, and I was able to shut my businesses down because I created something that I call a money machine outside the business. It's like my own ATM. So we turn the machine on. It's spitting out cash to support our lifestyle. I'm not draining savings. I'm not selling stuff. I'm not selling my wife's shoes. God forbid, that would have been worse than the cancer. Okay. So I'm not doing any of that. And so that was June 2019. 3 surgeries, 4 tumors, 43 treatments, clear for 2 years now. Okay.
Amazing.
But as I came out of that, then the pandemic hit, and I watched people struggle. I watched people suffer. I watched people lose their businesses, lose their livelihood, have to get sent home. They weren't surviving financially. Now I had to fight the cancer mentally, physically, spiritually, energetically, all of that, but I didn't fight it financially. And yet, in today's world, financial stress is one of the highest level stressors in people's lives. And people said, like dear friends of mine that you might know, James Wedmore and Rick Mulready, all those, they had been pushing me for years to start talking about how I did this. Even before the cancer, it was the cancer that lit the fire. It was the pandemic that stoked the fire, to sit back and say, I think I'm being called to do this, because too often we think that being financially independent is hard. It's complicated. It's not for us, and it's for those other people. And yet it's simple. It may take effort, but it's simple, and it doesn't have to be complex. And so that's how I come about it and say, let's give you the tools. Let's give you the tactics. Let's give you the strategies, and let's let you walk the path. Because if we do this right, you can take care of things, and you don't have to worry about the government. You don't have to worry about your job. You don't have to worry about those things over time. I mean, my son is now 31. He'll be 32 in 2 weeks. He's got a beautiful bride, 29 years old. They've got their first child, my first grandchild. Congrats. And here they are at 32 and 29, 3 homes and multi-million-dollar net worth. And it's only because they understood principles, and they understand principles. And I said, these are not things that the financial industry, they'll talk about it, but they love to keep things complicated, because then we become dependent on them.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I don't sell investments. I want to sell people on their dreams and give them the tools, give them the tactics to say, here's how you do this. Because I truly believe that we all have the right to be independent. We all have the capacity and capability to be independent. We just are not given the tools to do it, because God forbid, money's a taboo subject. Let's not talk about it. Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing I believe is that no one has money issues. We have money symptoms, but we don't have money issues. The symptoms are caused by our thinking and our behavior. And so the bad news is, if it's our behaviors that caused our money situation, you got to take responsibility for it. The good news is, if it's the behavior that caused it, you have control of it. So all we got to do is tell you what behaviors to use, do those behaviors consistently, and the symptoms go away. So that's where I kind of play and say, it's within reach for everyone. Sometimes it's a little further, sometimes it work a little harder, but we just got to give them simple principles, and let's start going after it.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you framed it out too. It's the thinking, right? I always like to say money is neutral. Your thoughts about money is what drives your experience with money and your feelings about money. So you want to change your relationship, start like in the brain first. but you've intrigued me too when you talk about you have this cash machine like you turned on. Can you just touch briefly on like, what does that look like in your life when you teach people about like tapping into this resource that exists potentially for them? And you shared a little bit more too, as entrepreneurs, you're kind of sitting, for those of you that are entrepreneurs listening, like talk more about your system maybe, or your steps, or the aha moment you had to create that.
So the aha moment really, like I said, came at the hands of my son. So here I was when he came to live with me. I had a CPA firm and I had partners, and they pushed me out the door saying, we don't want to be partners with you anymore. Now, here I was, this single full-time dad. I had just purchased a home. I was $320,000 in debt. I had no clients, no client backlog, no cash flow. I had nothing. And so I did what most entrepreneurs would do. I stuck my head down, dug my heels in, started running the miles, started getting the cash in. And then Jeremy comes running in at 6 years old, running, goes, Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today. So I knelt down, and there was this little picture that he drew of me in blue felt tip pen. And there I was standing in front of 2 computer screens with a phone in each ear and one on the desk ringing. And it was in that moment that I sat back and said, I'm screwing this up. Mm-hmm. I could tell him that, hey, I got to do this for us so we can have the roof over our head. I can do these things, that we can do these things. But he didn't see us at Disneyland. He didn't see us working together. He didn't see us playing. He just saw me as work. And that's that whole idea of work-life balance and harmony. But that's when I started to say there has to be a better way to do business. Now, I came from a business, and you're in somewhat similar circumstance, because I was swapping time for money. And so I was an integral part of that. And for me to scale that meant I either had to put more time in, or I needed to do something else. And that's when I looked at it and said, I need to actually create 2 businesses. And this works whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee. I think we all need it. And that is, there's my primary income source, which is the business or my employment, my job. Then there's this machine. I need to take that primary income source. And entrepreneurs especially, we come to a business thinking I'm going to have control, I'm going to have freedom, and I'm going to have an impact. And nothing can be further from the truth. You'll have an impact. You probably have no control and you have no freedom, and you're going, what the heck? And the problem is that business was never meant to give you freedom. It was there to create a solution and have an impact. Your job was never really meant to give you freedom. It's there to give you, have an impact and give a solution. What we do with the cash flow from the job, the cash flow from the business to build a machine is what gives us freedom. So we all have to, no matter where we are, think about how do we create a money machine of investments that can produce cash flow over time to take care of us. Now, some people will call it passive. I don't want to call it passive. I think it's a mistake because, as you kind of said, you have a relationship with money. And if my relationship with money is passive, I've been married, I'll be married 11 years this year. If I took a passive approach to my relationship with my wife, and I've got a wonderful wife, that relationship isn't going to survive. It's the same thing with our money. So I'd rather look at it and say it's a leveraged relationship. In other words, how much am I involved with it? And so I need leveraged investments, not debt, but leveraged investments, leveraged in terms of how much time I'm doing. So my mentoring practice or your coaching practice, that's active. You're very much invested in it. But if on the side, we're taking some of that cash and we're building, whether it's real estate or other investments, and we're building that, you're not as involved with it. It's more leveraged. And that's what allows you to create this ultimate ATM.
Yeah.
And so it takes time. But what happens is that over time, you start to build that. A dear friend that we helped him he ended up building a portfolio because he was on this launch roller coaster. And I said, we need to do something outside of that. God forbid something happens to you or anything, or you just decide you want to stop. Well, now he's got a portfolio that's going to produce $40,000 a month for him based on what he's done. And we all need to think in those terms. It becomes our responsibility to figure out how do we create our own pension plan, our own lifetime of income. And the way we do it is by building a financial machine outside of our primary income source.
Yeah. Okay, I want to call something out here because we're talking to primarily women. And here's a conversation that I have with women. If I'm hopping on the phone with a potential client, and obviously inevitably the investment comes up about what coaching will look like or joining programs it will look like, one of the things that is interesting to me over time is the back seat that so many women are willing to take to their financial independence. And sometimes it just goes like full avoidance, like, oh, no, my husband deals with that side, right? And then what happens is, unfortunately, marriages end, right? And there's no ownership around the money. So women listening, like, we are part of the team. And this conversation is for all of us. It's inclusive for all of us. And to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And not all men are just financially savvy, and not all women are the opposite. And so I think that ownership, that collaboration, if you're married and listening, even if you're single, you're divorced, is like just taking a stand for yourself, and to see, like you said, that even if it's $5 a month or it's, $5 a paycheck, I don't know what your system is, but I think just like showing up somewhere, start where you can start on the conversation is really important. And that's what I'm taking a little bit, I guess, for the audience today too.
Well, and I think you're hitting right on the point. And I think that's it. I mean, $50 a month, okay, can turn into over $300,000 over time. Okay. My little granddaughter was born August 2nd last year. Someone asked me, what are you going to do for her? I said, I'm going to put $500 in an account away. Then I'm going to put $25 a week away. So $100 a month. I'm going to do that for 20 years. Now, I don't believe in giving your kids assets without giving them skill sets. So at some point, she's only 7 months old, so it's a little early, but at some point we're going to have money conversations.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do that. That means I put $20,000 away for her. I'm only going to do it for the first 20 years of her life. But if she has the skill sets at that point and she leaves it in the investments and keeps it running, she'll have over $1.5 million when she goes to retire. I'll set my granddaughter up without an inheritance necessarily, but with the responsibility and the ability to do things. Now, for us, we're not just newborns, we're older, but the same thing goes for it. If we start somewhere, one of the biggest excuses I'll hear is that, well, when I make more money, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Time is our biggest lever in wealth creation. So the sooner we get in the game, the faster we start to get what I call money momentum. And so whether it's $10, whether it's $50, whether it's $100, it doesn't matter. The key is that we get in the game. And to me, wealth creation is a muscle. It's a behavioral muscle. So the sooner we start exercising the muscle, we get used to that exercise and we do it. So if those of you that might be in a job, I want to make sure that you're putting money in and your employer has a 401k. I want you to put money in the 401k, at least to their match, so you get the free money from the employer. And get in the game of it and the habit of it in a way that over time you'll say, how did I end up with 50 grand? Oh my God. And so the first step is really making sure you get in the game. And I'd love to just say something as a dude. I think you're right. A lot of times, like even my wife, when we got together, she figured I'm the money guy. She's the health person. She's in the medical field. And I said, no, I need you on this financial journey with me. I want you on this financial journey with me. And I know some guys don't necessarily want that, but it isn't about the finances. It's about your life vision. Mm-hmm. It's about how you want to live your life. And so I'd have the conversation around the vision you want for your life. And then you can reduce it down to the price tag it's going to take to have that life vision. Because unless we're willing to have those frank conversations, if I've got someone that's a spender, someone that's a saver, you're going to have conflict. It's one of the biggest friction points in relationships. Let's put it on the table. My wife watched my mom when my dad passed away. She watched her mom when her dad passed away. Both of them struggling to say, I don't know which way's up financially. I don't know if I can keep the house. What do I do? I don't think we ought to be doing that to our spouses. As a man, I think that our job, our role in the relationship and everyone's is to make sure that my spouse feels safe. And part of that safety for me is her knowing that she's taken care of.
Yeah, for sure.
And that I've thought things through, even though I'm the one that's directing most of it. She's involved in it, but it's not like she's not looking at the prospectuses. She's not doing the analysis, but she understands the vision. She understands what we're trying to accomplish. We're on the same page and we're walking the same path together. And at the beginning, that might be a hard conversation, but I think that this financial conversation can either be something that torments a couple or cements a couple moving forward.
Yeah. So good. Such a great way to reframe it, which I think, like, just to bring it full circle too, one of the things I said I really wanted to hit on with you was this notion of living a richer lifestyle, which I guess I'm curious what that means to you, because it could mean many things, but I guess what does that mean to you? Like, helping people live a richer lifestyle obviously comes not just from financial investments, but just, I think, mindset in general, personally, but I'm curious what that means to you.
So wealth to me is a statistic. It's a number. There's a lot of people that have a lot of wealth, but they're miserable. They have no richness in their life. So to me, the richness comes from the feelings, the experiences, the sharing, the giving, the generosity between us as a couple, us as a family, and us as a community. And the reason that we want the money is not for the money. The reason we want the money is for the moments. When I can buy back the moments of my life, if I want to truly measure wealth, let's measure it in time and not dollars. And if I can buy that back and say, I want to create an experience, whether it's with my spouse, whether with my children, my grandchildren, that to me starts to create the richness in life. I was one of those that was all focused on accomplishing, acquiring, and achieving. I got in a mountain bike accident that put me in a neck brace, stuttering. One of my best friends says, I'm coming over. I'm taking you out to a pastrami sandwich when we used to eat pastrami. And so I'm sitting across him in a neck brace, and he was retired at 35 years old. And he looks at me and he says, how much is enough? And I go, what are you talking about? And he says, how much is enough? The reason you got in a bike accident is because you were distracted, you were angry, you were driven, and you were just running. And you got in a bike accident. He says, and right now you don't know what your finish line is, do you? He says, and if you don't know what your finish line is, you'll get back on that bike and you'll do it again. And you'll do it again. He says, at what point do you realize that you have crossed the line and you really know where you're at? And I go, I don't know. One of the first things that we try to do with folks that we work with is let's create that affluence vision. Let's decide what that richness looks like. Let's define the life specifically. And even if I don't get all the way there, we now know that this is where we want to go. And now we can set a plan in place for doing that. And so I try to judge my life these days based on the experience. Given the cancer experience, I know that days are numbered. I hope that there's a lot of numbers, but they're numbered. And so I take every moment for everything that it possibly is, even as little as saying, when your spouse comes home, do you put the phone down?
Yes.
And look them in the eye? That creates richness. There's this moment that you can make meaningful and more meaningful and not just assume that you'll have another time.
Yeah. Good. Oh, so many good nuggets. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. And I want you to share just a moment where people can connect, where the ladies can connect with you after the show. But one of the questions I like to ask at the end of every single episode relates right to the podcast and our signature program title, Feel Amazing Naked. But I'm curious, what does feeling amazing naked mean to you?
I think being truly who you are, living truly aligned and comfortably with who you are, especially I think in today's world of comparison and judgment, the fear of showing up fully you. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing, because now I sit back and I say, this is me. You're going to accept me for who I am or you're not. And I'm okay with that. But don't demonize me just because you don't want to accept me.
Yes.
Because I will push back on that. But I want to know that our meeting, our time here, or when I meet someone, that they know that they met the real Mel, that they know that they did that and that I showed up fully in that moment. And so to me, that's what it means to me.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing so many things. Where can we connect with you after the show for the listeners? Where's the best places?
You know what? I'm on Instagram, Mel Abraham 9. I have no idea who the first 8 are, but we'll hunt them down. Okay? And I have my own podcast and show, The Affluent Entrepreneur Show. I'm on YouTube there, and my website, Mel Abraham. I've got financial tools for y'all if you need. There's a 7-day money plan workshop that you can see on the website. Anything to help you. And the other side of that is this. If money questions come up, if you have anything, I welcome the conversation. I welcome the questions. I'll bring them on the show, or I'll respond to them privately if you want. I've coached people on the show. I want to create a safe haven to have the money conversations that maybe we weren't supposed to have, or at least they told us we weren't supposed to have, and just keep it real.
Cool. Amazing. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes too for you guys listening. You want to connect. And Mel, thank you so much for creating space to connect with me today. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, totally sucked in. So thank you so much.
Oh my God, this was a gift to me. I appreciate you and having a chance to share it with you. And I look forward to more.
And if you love this episode, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast on whatever favorite podcasting app you have. That way you will be sure to get the newest episodes delivered to you for free as soon as they come out.